Like I never finish a meal, so it's just like finish this.
You would think. Okay, I got it.
Well,
Like since we
okay.
yes.
Like the vaccine.
Exactly.
Right.
Almost a year.
Whatever you do, it's well, right.
Yeah, really.
But
it seems like with my experience.
We can talk.
I need you guys to talk loud.
You need us to talk about it?
Yeah, because we're competing with the air conditioner problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys competing with air conditioner and this is back here. So I get the full view.
Okay.
So when you guys talk, we're gonna talk loud.
Okay.
How loud? That loud?
Is this loud enough?
That loud?
Yeah.
Is this loud
I
enough?
want you to use your outdoor
Our
voices,
outdoor
but
voices?
indoor.
Okay.
Yeah. Outdoor
Have we
and
started?
Yeah, this has been started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say stuff like that.
All right, let's go. We're about to get started, everybody. Every post is like,
Yeah.
chilling, acting like whatever, so, acting like nothing's scheduled.
Well, thank you guys all for being here. I am DeJeonge Reese. This is
I'm Lynda Grace back.
and this is our show, Embraced by a Threat. Embraced in a Threat. Excuse me. Embraced in a Threat.
I can say that.
We decided to do this show together after showing our work in a group show at Rush Arts Philly last August, in which we could not help but recognize the parallels in our work. So for me, being a member here at Muse Gallery, I had the opportunity to have this space to put us together a joint show, which was great. My work distinctly is mostly the quilts patterns that you see. My work in this particular show was focused on the idea and history behind how braids and black hair were once used as maps or even coded messages during enslavement and also to escape enslavement, but also thinking about how quilts were used along the Underground Railroad to signify safety or shelter or safe border or danger. So thinking of that idea, I first started by creating this kind of quilt made out of hair, which prompted me to start to look just differently as hair as a mat, as a survival tool in a sense. This piece behind us here, I was researching the Tegan Law, which was a law in like the early 1800s that in which enforced women of color to cover their hair. And thinking of that and thinking about how over time how prominent the head wrap, the bonnet is in Black hair culture, I wanted to kind of honor it in a sense. So I collected all these bonnets and different scarves from friends and family. I told them to send them to me worn and used, no matter how torn, so I can compile this quilt, which was completely hand sewn. And it probably took me about a month to make, but luckily my friends got me the material rather quickly. But yeah, that was my first time experiencing a quilt, but between those two major quilts birthed my other smaller pieces, which combine both the hair and the fabric, which is actually my first time playing around with abstract art. In a sense, it was really me just using materials I already had left over. And I kind of like how they came out because they kind of become these textile maps in their own sense. But yeah, we couldn't help but notice the parallels with Lynda's work, especially as I started sewing more. But I'll pass it to you to talk more about your pieces.
Thank you. So let's see here, where to begin? I have this thing going on in me about the importance of expressing our interdependence on one another. We actually I believe that anything I do absolutely is going to impact another person, and it's the same thing, anything I do. And I just have a really deep concern about that, and I often express it in my work. So, let's see, I began doing these sort of colorful yarn collages. My work started with, the short story is, it started with me creating a card collection, a greeting card collection, and it was, the cards were expressing, had different quotes, African proverbs and more, all expressing our interconnection with one another in some way. And fiber, of course, is a wonderful, symbol for that because, it's fiber, and fibers connect, right? And one piece of fabric begins with a fiber. From there, I began to explore vessels, and I began exploring vessels because I was noticing people that I wanted to say a prayer for. I was concerned about them. I wanted to spend some time sort of reflecting on their lives. And so I was doing a vessel a day out of hemp twine, and I was crocheting one small vessel every single day in honor of the lives of these folks that I would see on my way to work. And from there, it grew to creating a series of over 70 vessels, particularly focused on the lives of Black and brown folk who have died at the hands of police. Well, that's hard work, and it's also sometimes depressing. And so, and it's important work to honor those lives, because I believe that those lives and our lives are not just a single story, right? Our lives are very vast. There's so much multiplicity to who we are and what we have to share, and the gifts that we carry, and the way that we connect with people, and the way that we can connect with people. And so the vessels subsided to kind of put them aside for a little while to begin to work on work that was a little more joyful. I needed that, and I know other folks needed it. And so I began working with brighter colors, and so some of the work that you see, the piece back there that's framed, timeline, the long horizontal piece, this piece right here to my right, flight, and are some of those examples of things that have a sort of a more happier energy, perhaps. And then back to kind of loss and connection, our connection with one another. I created that vessel that you see on the pedestal there to address the importance of Black farms, Black and brown farms, indigenous farms, the farms and the labor of people of color. But also the loss of the land. We have lost a tremendous amount of land and a tremendous amount of wealth due to discrimination, due to all kinds of horror and violence. There's a QR code. If people want to know more about that, there's a QR code on the wall behind the vessel. The vessel's called 40 Acres. There's a QR code behind the vessel that where you can access more information about this particular issue. But you can also find out about farmers of color today, particularly young folks who have small farms and who are urban farms that are doing the work of growing their own food and sharing it with the community. Some of my work has, particularly the work that I was doing around vessels, have lynch knots, because you know what a lynch knot represents, a noose. People were hanging us right in life. They didn't care. They were picnicking around all of that. It was entertainment. It's bizarre, but it was entertainment for people to lynch us, to mutilate us, hang us from a damn tree, And it was, you know, this was entertainment. The kids were coming on. They would take parts off of us. It's the truth. So some of my vessels have bench knots connected to them. So I had this thing about bench knots, and so to my left there, the square piece is called bench knot aesthetic. It's not your real bench knot on there because bench knots are obviously a little bit longer. But one of the things that I was just doing is playing. I like twine, and I'm always saving strands of fabric and things like that. And so I decided to do a little study, and so that's what you see in that piece there. I don't know if there's anything else. So right behind you are a couple of vessels on the wall, the twine. Those are some vessels that I made in the most of my vessels are with, most of them you can just hold in your hand. They're small, because when I was creating that body of work, I was also working full time and probably going to grad school, so I didn't have time to create big pieces. So that's why they're small. But it's not a reflection of those lives. Those lives are big. The vessels might be small, but those lives are big. That's what I got.
So we'll open it up to just general Q&A from that. So anything we didn't already speak about, or you want us to elaborate on more? And
The one piece that just sold to you, correct? It intrigues me that you can hold that in your hand.
Say it again.
It intrigues me that you can hold that in your hand, you know, and it's so small, it's sort of really, really big.
Yeah.
It's like a paradox.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, it is. And I thank you for getting that. Catherine! Two more folks are coming. Hi, and good to see you. Yeah, so, you know, I believe that our bodies are vessels, right? Our bodies are not small. So it's a symbol. It's a symbol of the largeness of life. It's a symbol of our story. It's a symbol of our connection to others.
I mean, it's
You know,
intimate.
yeah.
It's really intimate.
Yeah, I thank you for that. You know, and that's it. That's the intention. And I appreciate you saying that. Thank you, because it is intimate. Thank you.
I'm sitting here going, which question? I'll just jump in with something. Thank you to you both and to the gallery for hosting this. I'm going to start with this one because I'm a ridiculously big fan of quilts by way of the G's Bin collective. And I remember finding something in my grandmother's house. It looked like she had started a quilt, but she never finished it. And I was all after G's Bin. I was like, because my people are from down south. I'm like, did they used to make quilts? Why didn't anybody talk about it? So I'm interested in how this went from an idea about hair to a quilt. I'm interested in whether you have ancestral connections to quilting, because this is off the chain, right here, in many ways. And I really respect you for taking the quilting tradition and like breaking the whole, orderly, I mean, I love those, but I also love what you did here by just being a rule breaker. And then also the meaning you're, I read that wall text and I was just blown away by just those little 4 paragraphs. Thinking about, the black women in headscarf, oh my God. The drop down menu is right. I was just like stuck on this, can you just talk about how did this become a quilt?
So yeah, it really did just start off as an idea, because I had already made the quilt out of hair back there,
Okay.
while thinking about, you know, braids being used as maps and quilts being used as messages along the Underground Railroad. And then I continuously am always doing research in my own way, because most of my work started from my own lock journey and just researching history that I didn't even know about when it comes to Black hair culture. So I came across the Tegan Law, and it just kind of struck me because I also was in this place of trying to expand my work beyond just like working with hair. So it really just became an idea, but I went to a residency in Tennessee last year, and I was with a group of textile artists who are mostly all quilters. And a friend of mine named Zach Foster, who works primarily with quilts, I literally just text him like, I have this idea, but I don't know how to make a quilt. I've never made a quilt like with fabric before. And just asking like, how do I go about it? Because I knew I didn't want to go the traditional route. I tried to at first, and it stressed me out because it's like so particular, like the measurements and all that kind of stuff. And for me, I was overwhelmed with the amount of people who sent me scarves or dropped them by, and they're like all from family and friends, like close family and friends. Like, this is my mom's bonnet, that's my cousin's scarf. And once I got all the materials and I saw all of these different prints and fabrics, and like, I wanted to make sure I took a piece from each person, each scarf that they sent to me to put in here. And one of the things he suggested to me was to treat it more like a collage, like an abstract collage or painting, which also allowed me to have more fun with it. And able to squeeze more pieces in there. So once I stopped trying to follow the rules of quilting, I was able to just open up to it. And like, that's why you see like there's pieces just overlapping other pieces, and they're like bumping into each other. But I also wanted to make sure I include like the American flag in there, or pieces like were right from a bandana, so things like that. But that's kind of, it really just started as an idea, and then I got a suggestion from a friend of how to go about making it. So it is actually weighted. There's like batting in between it. And then I also made sure you could see the stitching on the back here, because I really wanted the hand stitch to be shown in that way. So from somebody who never made a quilt before, it really was like experimental, because I love dipping in like into different mediums. I'm always saying like, I'm in textiles for now. But that's really how it started, is just an idea, and I asked a friend like, what's the most basic way I can make a quilt? And he's just like, make a quilt sandwich, just like a batting in the middle, and then just put your top, like, you know, the thing on top. But I just had fun with it, and like, I think I had this thing like all laid out over the floor everywhere, just laying pieces out, moving them into different ways.
Were you changing a lot?
Somewhat. As I put them together, I would be changing them or taking pieces away or moving them to different places. So just playing around with it until I felt like I liked it aesthetically. And once I felt like I liked it aesthetically and was happy with it, then I was able to, But I was just like, I said forget the rules, because,
Can you tell them more of the build up to this one?
The build up.
Yeah, like how so this is where she started at before making it real big. Okay, so if you want to see exactly how, because she didn't just sit down and do this. She literally, we're gonna pass them around so y'all can take a look at it. But she started on smaller, little mini ones, just to see the aesthetic of what this big one could look like in her mind.
But you asked about ancestral, so I do know, so I learned originally how to sew like a basic running stitch from my great grandmother and my grandmother on my dad's side who used to sew, but also my dad has a few quilts from like his great grandparents. So I have that sort of connection, and I knew how to sew like enough where like if something ripped, I could just like stitch it back up. So, but I just knew going into it, I was like, I want to do it hand sewn. I want to just make sure it has like all the hand imprint in it, but I really wanted to make sure I was using pieces from people that are close to me, just to highlight the head wrap and the headscarf. Because even in a time now where like, if you're seen outside of your bottom of your scarf, it's like ghetto or like unprofessional, and it's a part of our culture and it's how we make it. It's such a prominent part from something we were forced to do, but we always are like we're gonna take that and we're gonna like double it. Because even with the law in place, many of those women that's when they started styling those head wraps into big bows, and people just thought they were just hats. So there's like thinking of that history and how we've kind of now brought that whole head wrap and headscarf into our culture is like, no, we're proud of our scarves, and like we're gonna have these cool prints and they're gonna help us take care of our hair. So yeah, and I had fun making it though, but yeah.
How long did it take you?
A month to stitch consistently, a month and some change.
Does that include the planning process of like moving the pieces around?
Yeah. Cause I'm very much a one project person. So it's like if this is the project I'm working on this. I don't have like 50 different projects going on at the same time. I cannot. Because if I have multiple going on at the same time, one like they're probably not going to get done. But once I zoned in and focused, and once I found that I was liking how it was coming out, then it was just like, yeah, I just knocked it out.
It's interesting. You said you were influenced by quilters, and I was influenced by quilters too. So I volunteer somewhere where many of the women are quilters, and so I've never I've never created a quilt. The closest I've come to creating a quilt is that vessel that has some quilting techniques, and I started that probably last year, but I realized that part of it was the influence of the women that I've been around, the quilters that I've been around, who are just making these fabulous, amazing quilts that are stories, right? They're stories about our history, or stories about their lives, or stories about somebody else's lives. I mean, there's just so much tremendous information available on quilts and the history of quilts. So that's the closest I've come to a quilt. I don't know that I'll ever actually make a quilt, but that I think has quilt techniques from the perspective of how you put the fabric together, but also the layering. There are 4 layers there. Like you have 3 layers, 3. So there are 4 layers there, and it's some of it is hand sewn, some of it is glue. It's a lot of stuff going on there, and oftentimes that's what you see in a quilt. You see all these different techniques in a quilt, right? Embroidery, there's some embroidery in there. So it's so I love that we have that going on. We both, have been working on, quilts to some extent, at least to me, to some extent, for just more recent.
Piggybacking off of what you said with storytelling too, that's the other part of what I was thinking about when I was making this, is just the stories that our scarves hold in themselves. Because I know, like, my one cousin is a model, so she's like always changing up her hair, doing different things, but she gave me a scarf that literally had like makeup still smeared on it, like different things like that, and it's just like it was like her go-to scarf when she has to go to a set. But then also, a friend of mine had recently had a baby girl, so like this little pink one here is actually from a baby's bonnet, because then I'm thinking about like that rites of passage that we all kind of go through with our hair. So I was just thinking about those different stories and things that happen, because life happens to us while we're in our scarves or in our bonnets, from like serious moments to just like enjoyable moments, cooking a family meal and things like that. So thinking about that behind like stories having quilts went into that too.
It's all energy.
Yeah.
So I have 2 questions. I'm trying to decide which one to ask first. So I guess for me, it's the first one is, you make a piece, or you create something and you have these intentions. Have you had the experience now that they're done and you've looked at them for a while, that you feel like you discovered something that maybe you're like, oh, I didn't know that would happen, or that someone's helped you discover something in the piece that you're like, oh, I didn't intend that, but I agree, right?
Yes. Yes, that's happened for almost all my work. It always starts out as an idea, and then my fun part for me is experimenting. So it's always like, well, I had this idea, but it's like, okay, well now how am I going to make it?
Right.
So like the piece that the larger piece with braids and fabric mixed in it, I made actually just this past June while I was at a residency at Virginia Center for Creative Arts, and I was there for a week. And I went with literally just a tote bag of like just random scrap materials I had left over from like other projects, this one and stuff like that. So I didn't know I was gonna make that. I just went with these random pieces, and once I got my studio space, I just laid them out and just started piecing them together. And throughout the week, every day when I was in my studio, it would be, I would hit a point in the day where I'm like, okay, I'm tired of looking at this, and I'll come back into the next day with fresh eyes, and I'll add more pieces to it here and there. So throughout the whole week, I just kept adding to it little by little. Until I found that I liked it aesthetically. And then I didn't realize until we did like a critique at the end of that week that I actually made it inspired by my environment, because I was like in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So a lot of it is like map-like in its own way, but it has like mountains, and it has like pieces that look like a lake that we have went to swim in, or like things like that. But I didn't realize I was subconsciously making of it while I was making it. It just happened. I don't know if that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, work comes to me sometimes through dreams, through different experiences. I say that my alter ego is farmer, so that's why. So this vessel here was a work that, again, I think it started in the fall. I think it was in the fall, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be or what. I knew I wanted a vessel and wasn't quite sure how to do it. One of the things I say about artists is that we're problem solvers. It's what we have to do, right? We're always in the process of creating. There's always a problem. We got to figure it out, and we have to solve it. So that was my first time doing a piece that size and doing a piece like that, and it required me to really think out of the box and to stretch myself in some ways that I almost put her down. I was just like, this is not happening. Emotions all from joy to depression, from depression to joy. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the issue. I am still learning from it. I absolutely am. Every one of these pieces have taught me something. It was a stretch. It was creating really out of my comfort zone. And I think that's, as artists, I think when you write, it's similar. You have some writers in the audience, and so the writers, it's similar. But for all of us, we learn outside of our comfort zone. Do we not? You know, there are many artists here, in this audience. And so it's outside of our comfort zone. Even if you're not an artist, it's outside of our comfort zone that we learn. And we may not know exactly what it is that we got, but it will. But we certainly did change as a result of making that thing, writing that thing, even talking about that thing. So it's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, I know with my practice, probably since even when I was in school, I wouldn't say it's a bad habit, but I never like sketch something before I make it. I'm more in one, like you said, like a lot of my ideas come to me in dreams, or just like random in moment. They come to me randomly in moments of stillness. So when I'm able to sit and just like kind of be present, and I'm like already thinking like, about my work in that type of way, that's kind of where I get my best ideas from. But I never like, my sketchbook is more like I jotted down the idea, but I I normally will get like a very visual image in my mind of what a piece kind of, or kind of what I want it to look like. And then it's my goal of like, okay, now how do I make that come to like fruition in reality? So that's always the fun part for me in that way. But yeah.
So I don't, yeah, if it's a real basic, like if I have a dream, only to capture the dream, it's a real basic sketch. I don't draw, that's not what I do. I don't know, like some people do these very skilled drawings and they've got the measurements, not me, you know, and so I'll jot down ideas, I'll jot down, you know, some language around it, I'll jot down but most times it doesn't start that way. It's usually not a sketch, it's just something I'm carrying with me, and oftentimes it's like, it's a prayer. It's just like with those vessels that I made that I was talking about earlier, I wasn't sketching them, I was just praying as I was making them, praying for those lives, praying for us, because you know, life is hard. And those folks, you know, I always say, you know, our mothers, the mothers and fathers, the family members, the mothers and fathers of those people who have passed away due to violence, that's not what their parents wanted for them. That's not what, and their story is bigger than that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for Dee and I, you know, one of the things is that, you know, our work carries stories. Our work carries stories. Our work carries stories. Your work carries stories. Our work carries stories. Our work carries stories. You know, and it's a story that we can articulate. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you might look at a piece and come up with a story for yourself. You know, you might find some inspiration in there, and there might be something that you're reminded of. But, you know, stories are the things that connect us. And so for me, that's, you know, an important part of why I create, to tell a story.
Yeah, because I actually was inspired by your vessel, which made me make my little ones out of hair in the window. But I mostly made those because I also was thinking about how during the slave trade, how, you know, before they like completely shaved their heads and everything, a lot of those captured Africans on the ships were, you know, they were storing things like their ochre seeds and things like that in their hair. So I just started thinking of the hair being used as this vessel and this, like, again, like this source of survival, like this means of survival in a sense. So thinking of the vessel in that way, originally my idea was, and I probably will get back to it eventually, but I was gonna make a whole bunch of them because I wanted to fill them all with like rice and different seeds and display them in that way in the installation. Eventually, you know, I'll go back to it, but I have made at least a good like 20 or so of them, but I was also decorating them with modern day hair accessories, just because I like bringing things from the past back to the present, because a lot of those things still carry with us. Our hair is still kind of a means of survival. Like technically, if you're in survival mode, you could take a piece of your hair and start a fire if you need to, or like little things like that, and just like how our hair is just so a part of who we are, a part of our history, a part of our culture. So I was very inspired by your vessels and take it that way. So it's just been interesting to see our minds in this parallel space.
Yes, thank you. I know for me, I had talked about putting vessels down, and I did put the vessels that I was making for the lives, as I said up there. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see you. I started making vessels from a place of joy, and so the vessels that you see in the window there, some are D's, the ones that are hair are D's, and then others are twine and yarn, and they were for me about holding space for another person in a different way, holding something precious, but yeah, just thinking about holding space, even for ourselves, right? Because we need to hold space for ourselves, right? So we've got some vessels over there, and so I think when you said you were making vessels, I was like, we should do a show.
Yeah. Because I think it came
all vessel show, right?
Yeah, because it came up that rush when I was like, oh, that's the idea I've been having for mine, is like this idea of vessels and hair as a vessel and like this tool. And then when you were like, yeah, we should do a show, and then I was like, well, I have my thing at music, but I also know I didn't have like enough to like really fill this space, so I was just like, let's do it.
Yes, it's interesting because how things evolve.
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about it.
We didn't talk about what work we were creating at all.
No, we thought we were doing a vessel show.
Yeah.
We had some conversation about that early on, and then next thing you know, here we walk in here, and this is like, oh.
I'm like, oh, this one, we obviously were in the same headspace with all of it, but yeah, we did not really I wasn't like, oh, I'm making this quilt for the show. I just made it. I originally planned to show some other works, I think, but it panned out how it was supposed to pan out.
Exactly. That's how things do.
Yeah.
And this is not like a question, because I just had too many, they balled up in my head. But it's more of a comment as a person that writes poetry. Just like these certain powerful nouns that you all are working with, I'm just loving how they multiply, like vessel on one hand, which goes in so many directions, and then hair on the other hand, which I've already said, like how many directions that goes in terms of what that means about storytelling. It's sort of, for me, it's very exciting because, and it also reflects ways that I work my practice, because when I'm liberated from teaching. But I taught for a long time, and I used to routinely, I just did a workshop, in fact, 2 months ago, and it was focused on nouns. So I would take something like the word vessel, just the word vessel, and make people write, like, where's that taking you? And it goes in all these different directions. And then also the idea of layers, which you talked about with Will, with Lynda talked about with the vessel, with all of these. It just makes me nuts to think about the richness that you're bringing by, you're making something, but you're making so much more than that by what's radiating out from that and into that. The last thing I want to say is that when we were talking about the importance of hair, I started thinking about I'm giving you work to do, right? But I instantly thought about Native peoples in the Americas and how hair mattered so much, and how when they would take the children away from missionaries, a word I've been focusing on lately, would take the children away from their communities and cut their hair. You know, like what that means and what that has meant, and many Native writers have talked about and written about that. It might I'm just sort of thinking about the other cultures in which, and it's probably all cultures.
Which is similar because a primary thing too for me, like I said, when I started my block journey, I had realized I did not have a lot of prior knowledge outside of just like Madam C.J. Walker about the history of Black hair culture. I grew up going to the hairdresser every 2 weeks, getting a perm every couple months kind of thing. So when I went to try to decide to block my hair, I had no idea about what Black hair represented even before slavery. So to find out that our hair literally used to be our walking identification card, as far as how it was styled and accessorized, it would tell you a person's rank in the community, what tribe they were from, their age, their marital status, all of these different things that just somebody's hairstyle is telling you. And so I think I kind of took that and ran with it, but then I also have picked it up here and there, like you said, other cultures and those similarities, which I do have like in my work, as far as just because when we're talking about Black hair culture, I feel like you can't talk about it without talking about other hair cultures as well, especially because when you think about how in today's society we use so many different hairs for our own styling. So women who go to buy their Brazilian weaves, you know, the long weaves from all different places and things like that. So it's I think it is kind of a universal conversation, but I do like zoning in on kind of the African American aspects, especially because we're still in an age where somebody can still judge you or based off of your hairstyle. You can still basically be completely judged off of your hair and your appearance for a job or some type of role. So I just feel like it's, you know, something still worth talking about.
Right, we're still self-conscious about our.
Yeah, I mean, they're still trying to pass the Crown Act in
Right.
all the states, and I think even in Texas was denying, like they passed it, but they were still having kids kicked out of school for having dreadlocks and things like that. So it's something that's still happening.
Absolutely.
So I like to, for me, my pieces are also a continuation of my own research and my own knowledge. I'm consistently reading books and looking at different articles and things like that. So it gets inspired by different things like that. Or sometimes I'm just inspired by seeing a hairstyle walking, like down the street, honestly. Which a lot of, like, if you see any of my masks that I've made out of synthetic braided hair, there a lot of them are either inspired by an African mask that has some type of spiritual connection to the cultural meaning of black hair, or they were inspired literally by a hairstyle I might have just seen on a friend or somewhere walking down the street. So yeah, I get inspired by different little things like that, but yeah, just.
I was really interested before when you pulled up the quilt and I'm on the back, and when you were talking about maps and like unconsciously thinking about when you were in the space making that one over there, and just like how interesting the back of that was, and almost like map-like, and just like how a map can show like boundaries of where people may have rights or not, or even like movement of people. And so I wondered if you ever considered like displaying them suspended in a way where you could see both sides, such as that one there and this.
Yes, that would be a thought. That is a thought. This was my first time showing this in public, in general. So I wasn't even really sure how I was gonna hang it yet. But I didn't think of the map part until I was finished it, and then I turned it over and was like, okay. It was like, I obviously am like stuck with maps here, but it goes throughout the entire back of like just live work, and so it. But it wasn't a conscious thing at first, yeah. But I have thought of different ways to display them. I definitely plan on playing around with them because I plan on getting some more showing out of them. So it's always an opportunity for that.
Yeah, the back is beautiful. It's almost like constellation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's like
a journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a thing all in its own.
Oops. We're good. It's fine. It'll be all right now. It's fine.
I don't know if it's a question, it's more like a comment question. Lynda's used to these, because I talk to her in these all the time. Which is, you know, first of all, thank you for making the work, for sharing it. And also, despite the size or, you know, like Lynda's, I always think of yours as so intimate because you can hold them. And my problem with textiles are I want to touch them, so I try very hard not to touch them. But just that idea of, even with the quilt, right, they're like acts of intimacy here too. Like there's acts of like parts of you, like, obviously on display, and that's not an easy thing to do. And maybe we don't think about it that way because it would not be an easy thing to do if we thought of it that way. But thank you so much, because all I can think about is like, I hope someone gets to roll themselves under the quilt at some point. I know not for now, but I really do hope that someone has that feeling, right? Because there's that feeling of being, right?
Yeah.
Just like all of those people, and those people's people, and those people's people.
Yeah. It was really interesting to me too when I was like first still stitching it together, because it's like a lot of the scarves, like I know some that came from like some of my close friends, like I could tell like, oh, she just got her braids done and she wore the scarf and it just smells like oil sheen, or like it smells like gel. And it's like the whole quilt really has like this kind of, like even though I wash it, it still has like this light scent of like hair products that just doesn't go away. So it was like that weird piece in there of like but you also don't even think of like scent being a part of your art in that way either. So I thought that was just like a very cool thing. But yeah, it is very hard, not like for people to touch. I found that very hard, especially with my work, because like most of my work deals with hair or something. People just want to like, you know. But yeah, I sometimes invite people to smell it. I don't think it smells like anything now anymore, but when I was like first time, it was like you could walk up to it and it'd be like, this smells like a braid shop, or like a hair, like it would smell like one machine or something, or like any type of hair product, which I love. But yeah,
It's interesting to think about because each one of these scars is a story in and of itself. Right? I mean, it's multitudes of stories. Because I always often think about, you know, the person who actually made the scarf. Like, who made this object? Like, the people who make our objects, right? Because people make our, I mean, well, still most times we have robots too. But, you know, but people are on the other end in some way, some form or fashion of the things that we use, the things that we carry, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there are stories. And there are important stories, and those are important lives. And so when you think about this, there's all of the stories that are here that, you know, not only the person who wore it, not only the person who made it, but the people who sold it, the people who made it, the people who designed the fabric, right? Because even that's a piece of it too. You know, so there's multitudes of stories in the work.
When I was asking a lot of my friends and family for their scarves, I've actually had people turn me down because they were like, I cannot give you this scarf. Like, they were just like, this is my one good scarf that I've had for like 9 years, and it just gets the job done. And it was like interesting to see people who were having a hard time parting with their scarf or bonnet in that way. It's like, it becomes like a thing, like this attachment. I'm like, and so I didn't think of that before until I started asking people for it, because they'd be like, they're like, look, I looked for you, but I can't give you this scarf. I've had it for the last 10 years, and like, so it was just like interesting in that way that it's become like a part of them, like in that way, like it's almost like a safety net or safety blanket or a go-to thing. So I found that really interesting when I was making it. It was, yeah.
The other thing we did was we created that little space for people to share our stories. And I had an idea about doing something with that today, but I've forgotten what it is now. So,
but feel free to interact with it. If you have not, it's just asking mostly what thread or means to you in relation to a memory. But also, yeah, if there's no more questions or comments, we do have refreshments over here, and we'll be hanging for more questioning around. So,
well, let me say this real quick too. I might do something with those. I feel like I should do something with those little post-it notes. We thought about putting them on cloth, but I just didn't have the time to cut the individual pieces of cloth. I just was like, but I think that there's some, because I asked for those stories. We asked for those stories, and they're important, right? And so I can't. So, you know, to honor those stories, and you know, so there's something's going to happen with this, and I need to figure it out. We'll figure it out.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because I have some. I literally just thought of something else.
Oh, okay, all right.
I was just going to say maybe. Well, of course, this has been up now for like a month.
Right.
So I don't know if you could recapture who did that, you know, who wrote their little story
Some
down.
people
But
put their names on them.
oh, did they?
But not all of them. I think
Yeah,
just a couple of people jotted their name.
Well, we might, if we do like a call through the gallery, maybe like a post or something.
But then will people even remember that they
Right, that's true too. But we'll figure it out, and then we'll try to get as many people as possible to respond who participated in that project. So
I think you should just record, like put tape, like not even take them down, but have people pick which one they read at random. And then, like, if you can find those exact people, have people who have no idea what's on it read it, and then even get what it means to them.
well, see, that was one of the things that I was thinking of doing. So yeah, I like you.
No, because my thought actually is because we didn't choose to do it with the cloth, but I have my paper making experience, they could be embedded in like, I could, if like I made my own sheet of like recycled paper and then put them into that, and then those multiple sheets could then be connected as almost a quilt or fabric.
Sounds like we got enough practice. Got another and we're gonna
But
do
I
it.
also follow other artists who I've seen use pieces of paper or something that they like either glue down onto their fabric with some type of material, which is also something I've been looking into. So I mean, it'll take some research.
Yeah, I know, you're right.
Yes.
I have made paper out of, like my own notes and what have you, because I'll write, because I'm a note. There's always a little note somewhere, and I made paper out of my own notes. So we've got something, we'll do something to honor those stories.
We'll figure it out.
I do have one last question. Do you think that the meaning of the art helps create it, or do you think the art dictates the meaning almost, like you finish it and then you realize there's meaning?
I think I normally have a meaning before I make a work, because I read a lot of books and do my own research on things so that I know I'm not just talking all willy-nilly. And once it's like, it'll be like a fact that just kind of stands out to me and it'll stick with me. So then that'll just be in the back of my brain, and I'll be just like thinking of like, what else can I create or things like that. And then, like I said before, in my moments of stillness or in dreams is when those ideas will kind of come to light, and I'll get kind of like a vision of like something I want to create, and then it's just a matter of figuring out how I'm going to make it. But normally for me, yeah, I will have a general concept or idea, meaning for it before I make it.
I think most times I am starting from a place of meaning. Like, I know what I want it to be, I know what it wanted to stand for, but I also think it evolves as I'm making it. Like, there's some new information there that comes forward. So I think that's what happens for me. Yeah, it just evolves and expands. Yeah, thank you. It's a good
Yeah,
question.
I normally have the meaning, but then for me, like I like the experimentation of figuring it out. Of like, how do I want to display this idea in a sense? Because something, like I said, like for now it's been like textiles and hair, but lately I've been playing around with like photography a little bit and things like that. So it's like for me, I think I learned that in grad school too. It's kind of whatever I start to feel, like whatever medium I start to feel is going to help me get that idea or meaning across better in a sense.
Yeah, I'm learning printmaking right now, and I found my parents' love letters. Five love letters from July 1954, when my mom was in Chicago visiting her sister, and my dad was here in Philly, and so they wrote each other. And I'm working on a project now, so around displaying their love letters in an art book that includes print, my own, and it also connects to what was happening at that particular time in our history. So civil rights. So it's just like the stories are just like, as I'm doing my research, I'm like, oh, and then so it's just interesting. It's just an interesting thing. And then the other piece of it is, after they got married, like for instance, I know we're going over, but I just need to say this. After they got married, so my parents married in 55. My sister was born in December 55. My parents were married January 1955. Emmett Till was murdered in August of 1955. My mother was carrying my sister, first child between the two of them. And I'm just so, I would love to be able to ask my parents, like, so what were you thinking? Like, they weren't in the South, obviously, they were here, but boom, like what? So the whole idea of this, like, just love in the midst of all what's happening, raising children, having families, all like, you know,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so all of, like your book, right? And so there's just so much information there for me, and so I'm just exploring this right now, and I'm so grateful for finding the love letters. And I've never done printmaking. Like, this is a thing that I never thought I would do. But somebody offered me an opportunity, I was just like, oh. So, and I'm still trying to figure out how to include like yarn and twine and stuff in these art books. So I'm gonna figure it out, because that's what my material is.
Yeah.
Like, is yarn and twine. But I'm gonna figure out how to include some of it in art books.
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? I'm gonna make it short. I just want to salute you people, as I am forever fascinated by Black people who pursue art intensely and intentionally, because there are a whole lot of things that you are pushing past, even now, in our notion of being more enlightened people. But I mean, I grew up hearing, people say, well, she's always writing something. People are made, and I come from working class people. They're like, okay, but what's your game? Like, nobody is really necessarily on board with you focusing on making art.
Right.
You know what I mean? And maybe even you as well have absorbed those like little doubts and niggling. Is this cool? Oh, the cool people.
That's a whole other conversation now too.
So I know it's a whole other conversation, but I just want to salute you because there is a whole lot of undiscussed courage that goes on between idea, yarn, fabric, and a gallery.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, there's a world of confidence and courage and badassery that you have to pull from somewhere. Nobody's necessarily like, whoa, this is so great. I mean, there's more of that than there used to be, but you're still like, you're still clawing through it. So I salute you for that, and I encourage you to think about ways to say what you're saying and do what you're doing in front of children. I'll just say children. But like, particularly in that vulnerable 7th grade, 8th grade, when they're about to go over the edge of the precipice.
Yeah.
Because that saved me when I was 13. To be exposed to that. And I think while we're lovely, all intellectual, downtown people here, but it would be really wonderful for students age, children who are student age, to hear and see that this is possible. It's a life-saving activity.
Being an artist was not something I actively and intentively went after at all. Like, it came back to me in a sense. And then even more so now because I teach at Lake University. So I teach introduction to art there for like the past 5 years, which is also my alma mater. So it's been nice to just go back and teach art, but also on a scale where they are getting, like my students who are art students are getting it from a perspective of somebody who's still actively in the arts. Which has been rewarding in that sense, because I've had one student last year who wasn't even my student. She came across my work from like one of the other professors, I think, but now she's been working in like hair and doing different things and has been like super inspired by my work and stuff like that. So that's been exciting to see in that way. So it's not necessarily younger kids, but yeah, but it's been nice to just kind of give back in that way, and for them to see someone who looks like them that is like actively doing it. And that's because I didn't have anybody like that when I was first dabbling in art to be like, oh yeah, that's a possible career path for me. It was just like, that's a hobby, and that's like, I'm not gonna do anything with that. And I was just like, yeah, kind of wrote it off, and then it found me.
I think it's an interesting idea, because I think it also works with like, you know, also coming from working, on the good days we were working class people. Let's put it that way. But just the idea, but also helping people see the creative acts in their everyday that they do not call art because of this idea of what high art is and what art is, right? So I have a mother, I love the way my mother wraps presents, but I can't be with her when she wraps presents because it takes hours, right? It takes hours, and she's playing with fabric, and she's gonna do it this way, she's gonna do it that way. Or that fact that people cook and things have to look a certain way, and that's how they want them to, right? All of those are like, we each carry our own aesthetic, we're just not given the language or the encouragement, right? To say that those things exist, right? Getting dressed in the morning is a creative act.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
We could talk for a while.
Yes, we could. So,
But I guess we need to, what time is it?
well, it's 3:30. But I mean, we're still here to mingle and talk.
Yeah.
And like I said, we have refreshments, so you guys are welcome to hang out and talk to us with any more questions.